So do you want to learn how to turn one load into 100 loads? Well, you got to lean in, because what I'm going to share with you today is one of the most valuable sales and growth strategies that you can leverage for your freight brokerage, but nobody talks about it. Nobody talks about it. And I have no idea why. It was a core growth strategy that I use to do over $200 million as a freight broker. And it's a core strategy that all of the large multi-billion dollar freight brokerages like C.H. Robinson and TQL and Coyote and all the big brokerages have used to build multi-billion dollar companies. All right. No, it's not some sort of a sales hack or a sales script or some sort of load board or some sort of AI tool. It's not some special shippers list. Okay. So get that out of your mind, but lean in, because I want to share with you a strategy. It's a strategic sales strategy called land and expand. Let me explain to you what that means. The land and expand growth strategy is a strategic sales strategy that allows you to start with a small deal, right? Start by securing a small, low risk deal with a shipper. That's the landing phase. Okay. And then systematically growing it into a relationship with a much larger, much higher volume account over time. That's the expand stage. Now, this is a strategy that requires a little bit of thought. It's not something that just naturally happens. Okay. So I'm going to share with you a few tips here on how to first understand what the land and expand strategy is, but also how to leverage it in your business to start seeing some of that growth. Okay. So in the land stage, right? Let's think about the first stage. The land stage, a lot of times what happens is you will position yourself as a low risk, reliable option to a shipper. But we all know that trust takes time to build. Getting that first load is the most difficult part of getting a customer, okay? Because once you get that customer and then you deliver on that, right, you've built a level of trust within them that will allow you to navigate and move forward to get additional business. The most difficult part, the part that has the most friction, is getting that first load. So offering yourself as a low risk option, maybe, as in a trial lane, or maybe, as a backup broker for somebody who's already the primary, and maybe if they fall off or don't have capacity, or maybe it's on a difficult lane, right? Or a lane that they're struggling with, or maybe they don't have some coverage for because it's a difficult lane. So those are some ideas on how to land, right? Those are some ideas on how to get your foot in the door, right? You've all heard that expression. We got to get our foot in the door. That first load is how we land. And so whatever we have to do to build trust and to position ourselves as a viable option to get that first load, that is the most critical step. We've got to get that first load. All right. Now, once we get that first load, what happens then? Well, now we've got to over deliver, because it's the over delivery in the execution that actually builds trust, right? Just giving you the load doesn't really build a whole lot of trust. But if you over deliver on that load, you do everything you've promised plus, and then in the back end, they see that everything went according to Hoyle with no issues, all of a sudden that builds an enormous amount of trust. Now, they're not going to go from one load to 100 loads overnight, but going from one load to 2 loads or 2 loads to 4 loads, that can grow very, very rapidly if you over deliver. So you have to have flawless execution on this first load. It has to go off without a hitch. Okay. That's just should go without saying. Okay. So that's the land stage. And then that's the delivery and execution stage, right? That's the second part. Now, finding expansion opportunities. Now, when you start getting into the expand stage, what happens is this is where you have to ask good questions. This is where you have to listen. This is where you have to do your research, because expansion opportunities can come in a lot of different shapes and forms, right? It can come in the form of additional loads within that existing lane that you've already moved. It could come within other lanes that maybe they're struggling with, or maybe they have new lanes because they have new clients or they've adjusted their supply chain, or it can come in different modes of transportation. Maybe you started by doing some partial truckloads or full truckloads, and maybe they're struggling with LTL or rail. And if you have those capabilities, maybe you can expand into those other modes, right? So there's a lot of different ways. Maybe there's another expansion opportunity because you're doing business with a client in their facility out of Buffalo, but they also have a facility out of Pittsburgh. And now all of a sudden they have needs there. So you can expand into those areas, into those other facilities. So there's a lot of different ways that you can find expansion opportunities. And those are just a few, right? But a lot of that comes from doing your research, asking good questions, and listening. Okay. So that's finding some expansion opportunities, and then from there, the key is obviously you want to scale that up, right? So you want to transition yourself from being a backup provider to the primary provider, but that takes time. Sometimes that can take months. Sometimes that can take 6 months or longer, depending upon how well you execute, how well you listen, and how well you build trust. One of the ways to do that, right, and to move from that backup to primary is to develop additional relationships beyond just your primary contact. So you might have a primary contact that's been tendering you loads, now trying to expand into other relationships, maybe their boss or maybe one of their colleagues, within that organization, trying to expand those relationships to build additional trust so that you can be seen as a trustworthy provider and a viable option to go from backup to primary. Okay. So those are some examples. First, what is the land and expand strategy? We talked about that. Second, we talked about how to land. Third, we talked about how to expand, right? And so that's going to give you a little bit of an overall idea of how this land and expand strategy works. I can tell you this was absolutely, positively critical to our success in growing our freight brokerage. It's been critical to any brokerage that's ever grown a significant revenue line, 10, 50, 100 million or more. Many times you can have a small brokerage that's doing $500,000 or $1 million. They've got a few customers, but they've never really fully deployed the land and expand strategy where going into other facilities or other modes or really having a systematic approach to this, right? You have to have a systematic approach. You have to come into this relationship knowing that this is going to be your primary strategy. And you need to have a little bit of a roadmap. You need to set some goals and you need to monitor and maintain that. So it's not something that just happens naturally by itself, right? So you have to be very specific. You have to be very intentional. So that's the land and expand strategy. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, make sure you click the like button and stick around because I'm going to be doing some Q&A in just a minute. But if you're curious about becoming a freight broker or a freight agent and you're looking for a roadmap, you're looking for something to take you from A to Z, check out freightbrokerbootcamp.com. Trained over 10,000 students, had that program for well over a decade. I think it's 15 years now. And we offer a 60-day, 100% unconditional money-back guarantee. If you're looking for more sales-related help, how to get shippers, strategies like the land and expand, or how to do cold calling, or how to get shippers specifically, you can check out my Freight Broker Sales Accelerator coaching and mentoring program. Again, you can check that out at freightbrokerbootcamp.com/waitlist. Okay? freightbrokerbootcamp.com/waitlist.